Having a great time. They're meeting his grandmother Saturday. That's what they named Ella. She's 85 years old, so they're having a good time.
How's she doing?
Good. She had a message. Another message. All right, we're ready. Rock and roll.
We're ready.
Call to order the Schenectady Urban Renewal Agency. First item is the acceptance of the minutes of our September 16th meeting. Entertain a motion, Mr. Palomini.
Second.
Walzuna seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes stand adopted. Next item is Resolution 2020-01, transfer of one property to the City of Schenectady, 1012 Eastern Avenue. Mr. Palomini. Zaluski Walzuna seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That resolution stands adopted. Next resolution, 2020-02, authorizing the chair to enter into a cooperation agreement with the City of Schenectady and the Land Reutilization Corporation. This would be more of a generic one, and then property going back and forth from the city would come back to the city council, either transfer it to SURA or to the land bank. But it'll put in place the framework for those as we move the properties from different status. Moved by Prazo, seconded by Karen Zaluski Walzunas. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any other business to come before the agency?
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Palomini, seconded by Mr. Mudaviran. All in favor?
Aye.
The agency stands adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Call to order public safety, and we have one item here, is 2020, New York State Stop DWI Plan Grant. Let's see. Yes.
Good evening.
This is what we received through the New York State Stop DWI and also the county, a portion of the excluded salary within the county. So that's what funding our staff is based upon. Activity as well, personnel officers. And this year, they awarded us $15,000. It's a little bit increase on last year, but it shows that they feel we're doing our stuff. It's not bad, it's still important. But it's really kind of falls over time. There's an equipment section that usually is in here right now. It's not like ever movement to this down the road, I'm told. So it's a purchase of equipment. This is strictly for unified enforcement, and certainly this was approved by the state as well as the county.
And that would be an increase into the spend on top of the 50,000?
50, yes, if there is.
Portion that's allowed for equipment purchases, all of you related type of stuff. I'm sure that there might be more down there. But I just kind of because this year is actually strictly this for long term.
Any questions? Comment?
I'll move it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any other business of public safety?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
City Development and Planning, the first item on the agenda is the issuance of a revocable permit. And
Mr. Rafalik.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Rafalik.
Mr. Rafalik.
Hi, good evening. I'm here to represent the Department of Engineering here this evening. We have before you 4 items for committee for review.
Revocable permit for 649 to the Electric City Art Gallery for a sign that will overhang the city's right-of-way at 160 J Street.
Right, all the paperwork is in order and planning has signed off on it.
Are there any questions? I'll move it. Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, the next item on there is the authorization or issuance of a revocable permit, 650 to Not the Nest for a sign that will overhang city's right-of-way at 512 State Street.
So all the paperwork was in order and the planning department has signed on that document also.
Okay, any questions? I'll move it. All in favor? Aye. Okay, and then the third item on here is the authorize the City of Schenectady lead agency for Rosa Road, Wendell Avenue, Knott Street intersection improvement project. PIN 1760.62 to declare the project will not have significant impact on the environment.
Right, so the Schenectady, so we want authorization for the city of Schenectady to be the lead agency for this project. Basically, the scope of this work is to provide modification and improvements for pedestrian safety at an intersection which has 5 major lanes or 6 major lanes of traffic, all converging on that.
Okay. Are there any questions?
I'll move it.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then the last item is the award of bids and contracts for the improvements at Fire Station number 3.
Okay, so the scope of this work provides improvements for Fire Station 3 up on Third Avenue in Mount Pleasant. It addresses enhancements and modifications for firefighter safety, living conditions, operational and response items. We have 4 independent bids, 4 clients that came in on this because it was greater than the Wicks Law funding. And we recommend awarding the 4 contracts for this improvement to be implemented.
Are there any questions? Ms. Perazzo?
Go ahead, if you have a question.
I just want to know what
statement.
add alternates, just because I'm new, what does that mean?
Okay, so we requested a base rate from each of the programs and what contractors. I talked about we have series of additional items that we needed and wanted to have addressed in scope of contract. So as a result of the tabulations, the ALW Associates was the low base bidder, and the RFOS on top of that got up to $623,000 approximately, and that dollar value was less than the next lowest bidder for just the base bid. So we're getting value from this award.
Ms. Perazzo?
I just want to say that, Station 3 has been one of the more challenging stations for a while, and I think many of us have been through the station, and this is a long time coming, and I'm more than happy to support it and make a motion if we're ready.
Absolutely.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, and I agree with you. It is a good project, and Station 3 is under needed renovation. So the next item on the agenda is a ceremonial resolution recognizing Women's History Month. And Ms. Whitaker?
Yes, so March is Women's History Month, and wanted to do a ceremonial resolution, actually in March, on the first council meeting, which will be March 9th.
March 9th. Okay. Any questions?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then a letter of support for Miracle on Craig Street for historical designation. Ms. Portillo?
Right, so we all received the email. I didn't see any response on it, so I asked to have it put on the agenda. Miracle on Craig Street has come to us before for the project that they've been doing. They now have the building, and their goal, as was said in the email, is to get historical designation. They recognize the fact that getting this will limit what they can do to the building by getting that designation, but they still feel it's beneficial to have it, and so therefore asking for a letter of support from the city to submit their application. So that's why I asked to put it on the agenda to bring it forward for us to support that or have a discussion about it, or whatever, the feel is on the council. I feel that we should support it. We've gone with them this far in terms of their project, and I believe our goal is for them to be successful, and so therefore this is just another step helping them get there.
Okay, any questions?
No? Full support.
I'll move it.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So the next items on the agenda need to be done in executive session, so I'm asking for a
Motion to recess.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We stand recessed.
So I'm going to open the Health and Recreation Committee, and I'd like to call on Mr. Kosher to talk about a resolution recognizing Walter Simpkins.
Yep, and, Mr. Simpkins has been a great community advocate in the city of Schenectady for many, many years, and It came to our attention via an email that the city of Albany recognized him just a few weeks ago. Something I think we want to work on here, because they were talking about possibly designating a street as well for him. So there was quite a few individuals on that email. So I'd like to see if we can get together with those individuals and discuss just how we can move along on this. And then, of course, the resolution or proclamation would come from the mayor regarding Walter Simpson's Day. But do we want to do a resolution now honoring and recognizing him, or can we hold off on this for a little bit till we get the rest of the stuff in order regarding possibility of a street renaming and the possibility of a special day for Mr. Simpkins himself?
I think that it would be beneficial to talk with the group, as you said, and ask them which would, be best to have, if they want it all at the same time, or if they like it now. I think that's a good discussion to have.
Right. All right, so I'll shoot an email out to folks and see if we all get together on it sometime next week.
Okay.
See who we can meet and where we can meet at. And again, Mr. Simpson, you know him as well. I've worked with him many, many years in our schools and our buildings, and he's one of a kind. So I think it's well overdue, and I think it'd be a nice recognition to him as well.
Mhm.
All right.
So do we,
So we'll table this.
We'll table it.
okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Call to order the Finance Committee. The first item on the agenda is purchasing policy for the city with Mr. Colvin.
Do we have a printout of the draft?
I have it right here. I'll circulate it. I didn't know where we stood with it at the time, so let me just, sorry. I have extras here, so anybody from the public would like a copy.
Oh, you have extra.
I do have some in there, yes. Previously, obviously, we talked about the purchasing policy, the time to review and pass a new purchasing policy is really effective as of 1/1/20, is something we've been looking at. It will be through December 31st, 2021. I had an opportunity to speak with President Mudavaren and Councilmember Palomini to discuss the policy last week. I also had an opportunity to speak with the purchasing department as well as the engineering department and the Office of General Services to discuss some of their concerns. The policy that you have before you this evening, I've marked up our old policy and incorporated some of the changes that was brought to my attention for discussion. Obviously, one of the things that Mayor McCarthy previously indicated was he wanted to remove the names, the individual names of people. So we've done that. So that, if people come and go, it doesn't essentially create a situation where, we haven't filled in the spot with somebody who can approve purchasing. One of the other changes that I made involved discretionary purchases. If you look at the bottom of the first page, previously purchases less than $300 could be made at the discretion of the mayor, the purchasing supervisor, or the mayor's designee. One of the situations that was brought to my attention, as well as the purchasing department, had to do with certain purchases that are made, particularly by the Office of General Services, where it's not feasible to get 3 quotes because of the timeliness it takes to get vehicles in service. For example, I think the example, Richard, if I may, was brake pads or other equipment that essentially the Office of General Services knows that they need. They know where to get the best price, and delaying the purchase by having to get 3 quotes means the vehicle's off the street. In addition, there are times when they don't know what is wrong with a particular vehicle or machinery until after it's already brought in for servicing, and it's like, well, what's wrong with it? It doesn't work. And they don't know exactly what is wrong with it until they disassemble it to figure out what exactly the issue is. So in order to, I think, also meet the changes that we're seeing in OGS and in engineering, and also I think to stay consistent, I think Richard may have looked into this, was increasing the discretionary purchasing that's allowed by bumping it from $300 all the way up to $3,500. And obviously that then changes some of the other numbers below that's reflected in here. On the second page, one of the changes had to do with change order requests. I know that's up for discussion if you want me to wait on that.
No, just go over it.
Okay. This is, after speaking to Council President Mudaveran, this is something that he wanted to see in the policy, at least for discussion purposes. All change order requests and approvals shall be made in writing. Whenever a change order is approved, the change order shall be sent within a reasonable time to the city clerk, who shall disseminate the order to the city council. So obviously that's one of the items I know that was previously discussed as it relates to certain projects that have happened in more recent times, where the council felt as though it was not finding out about it until essentially after the project was completed. On the third page is the next change. At the top of the page, at the first Finance Standing Committee meeting of the month, and this should be, rather, it should not be and, it should be or, I'm sorry for that typo there, or as soon as reasonable thereafter, the mayor or the mayor's appointed designee shall provide the committee with a list of professional service contracts into which the city entered in the preceding month. As it is right now, professional service contracts, for example, the law department retains outside counsel on a matter. That's an instance where the city council doesn't necessarily find out about it officially. So this would obviously make it so that the city council knows what professional services the city's contracting for. At the bottom of that page.
Before you go, Ms.
Yes.
Perazzo had asked for this section here to be updated. Is that something that you're good with, Ms. Perazzo?
Well, I have some questions, but I don't know, I didn't want to
Go
stop
ahead.
him, but
Yeah.
I do have some questions about how that would function.
You're good to take a question here now before we...
If it's okay, I'd rather just go through it and then we
Okay.
can just handle all questions. I think it may flow better.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
okay. Thank you. At the bottom of that page, Public Works construction contracts exceeding, we had it at 200,000. We've increased it to 250,000, but there is an addition on here that kind of changes things a little bit more. So Public Works construction contracts exceeding $250,000 may only be awarded to contractors and subcontractors that have an approved apprenticeship program as provided for in Article 23 of the New York State Labor Law and meeting state, federal, or City of Schenectady minority and women-owned business utilization goals as appropriately apply. So obviously that's an increase of $50,000. The language in the next section relates specifically to the training and employment support program that the city's Office of Affirmative Action provides. It states, notwithstanding Section 3A here and above, Public Works construction contracts exceeding $250,000, but not more than $350,000, may only be awarded to contractors and subcontractors that do not have an approved apprenticeship program as identified in Section 3A here and above, so long as the contractors and subcontractors have completed the City of Schenectady Office of Affirmative Action Training and Employment Support Program. That was a suggested modification from my conversations with Council President Mudaveran and Council Member Palomini.
That's correct.
Those are all of the changes that I've incorporated. I'm more than happy to answer your questions and provide any context that you need.
Mr. Razzo, you had some questions on the section there?
Yep, so my first question is section 1, the purchasing requirements, that all change orders, requests, and approvals shall be made in writing, come before the go to the city council. But it seems to me that it still doesn't include any oversight on our part, right? And I know that we had originally discussed when the change order is a certain percentage over, that it would come back to the council. So is there,
I can certainly incorporate that in. Nothing had been set, as I said. These changes that I've made here came after conversation last week with Councilmember Palomini and Council President Mudavaren.
yes,
So obviously changes beyond that, this is policy, so it's not legal. So this is,
Yeah.
guided by what the city council would like to do.
well, it seemed to be a pretty strong point around the table, so I just wondered how that was changed, or why it was changed.
If I may, what is the threshold that we have right now?
300.
No,
The threshold
for
for,
change orders,
well,
limits.
I mean, technically, any change to the contract terms or the specs of a contract, any change would have to incorporate a change order, a written, change. For example, and I think the example that we can think of is Ardsley Road. Initially, the specs on that, I think, were, I'm trying to think how many trees were supposed to be removed there. I think 8 trees is my recollection.
Somewhere around there.
And there had to be a change order where 2 additional trees had to be removed. So there had to be a change order to make that change, right?
Right, but I think what Mr. Mutavern is asking is there any provision currently at any threshold where the change order would come back to the council? Because I think that's what we were looking for.
Right. No, I mean, within this policy, no.
Right, so
Right.
although we're seeing the change orders, we still have no power to do anything about it, right? We still have no ability to make it any different. It's just, we're just gonna see them. You know what I mean? And so that I guess to me, that defeats the purpose of our initial conversation, was that if the change order was more than X percent, it would come back to the council. So more than 20%, or more than 25%, or more than 10%, or more than anything, was our original
Are you in
discussion.
this section or am I?
No, I'm on
Oh,
the
all right.
second page.
I
Where
thought
it
you
said
says
page.
author.
All right.
Yeah.
Page 2, just the
All right, I
bottom.
see what you're saying.
That's correct. I did not incorporate those changes. Obviously, as I said, this is policy rather than, I guess, a legal situation. So, if the council, essentially you tell me what to put into the policy, and I will certainly put it in the policy for review and
Well,
consideration.
I feel like to avoid situations like we had with Ardsley, we need to put some sort of a check and balance on it and attach some sort of percentage that the council would have the ability to weigh in, or I don't know. And so I think that's an important piece that we're missing here. And there was robust discussion around.
I think go ahead.
The practical side, I've used the tree issue. It was originally, was it 6?
It was either 6 or 8, and it went up to
Whatever the number was. So we move on, if the decision's made in the field to take down the 2 additional trees. If it has to come back to the council, the cost on that's probably gonna be greater because the crews are gonna be held up for, say, a full 2 weeks to do it. And so it's, you put a practical component into changes in the field that are what everybody wants to have the project completed.
Well, it
And is
seems
it-
practical to me to have something come back to the council where the price is going to actually double, right? So even if we put in 25%, 2 trees aren't gonna be 25% of that project. But when we have a project that doubles in cost, I think as the purse string holders, we should know that and have the ability to weigh in on that.
I think there was some misunderstanding here. The
field work
The
order.
idea was that it was supposed to be all change orders come back to the city council, but there were exception for field change orders. And I think we didn't catch this when we
Yeah, I
got
think
it.
we missed that. We discussed that last week in terms of the field work order. That would, instead of slowing up the work will continue, but we will get notification via the field work order in terms of what is going on the work needs to proceed, and nothing is being held up.
Right. And
But we can't have some situation where people are gonna make the decision in the field to proceed ahead, comes back to the council doesn't like it.
What do you got?
We're gonna
Yeah.
end up in Supreme Court.
So, I mean, yeah, I do recall that conversation, Ms. Peraza. What we had talked about, my recollection is going with, because certain contracts, let's say we're talking about a $100,000 contract, okay, as an example, going back to the council if, you know, the change order exceeds a certain percentage of that underlying contract, or we go with a threshold with an amount, you know, the greater of those two. And it's really up to the council in terms of when, you know, what those numbers, what the percentage is and what that amount is as the greater of those two. Because obviously we have certain contracts that are very low. You know, we may have a $15,000 contract where it doesn't make sense that, you know, a 25% change order, because that's not a lot of money, right? But you know, if you set it at $50,000, that's something more significant, the greater of 25% or 50,000, you know, and then, you know, it's gonna be the greater of those two, it would come back to the city council. We did discuss that. I never received a particular number, percentage, or amount. Again, it's a policy set by the council.
Would, just because this was for discussion anyway, would 20% be amenable to everyone on the council, or just to get an idea? Ms. Zaluski,
So I think we need to make sure that, yes, if there's something that's inordinate, that's above and beyond as far as what we have approved. But your point is well taken. If there's a $15,000, project, and there's a, and something that's happened that's going to increase it by $5,000, does that really need to come back to the council if it's, in line and has to be done? I think we need to dive a little deeper in here to make sure that we're doing this where it's still reasonable and practical for the work to get done, but allow us to have the oversight. And I think we need to realize that, with a $15,000 project, if it's over 20%, it's not something that would have to come back to the council. On the other hand, if you're looking at a $200,000 project and, there's a $70,000, increase in project cost, then that, I think, needs to come back to the council. So I guess the wording I would want to see is along those lines. I don't know if anything less than $50,000, as long as it's not doubling or use another percentage, but anything over 50 or 100, whatever it may be, should be maybe a 20%. If there's a 20% or a 25% change order on that, then it needs to come back to the council for approval. But according to this, it doesn't, whenever a change order is approved, it's not being approved by the council, it's being approved by whatever department.
Right.
So I would encourage us to get a little bit of.
That wasn't, it was a,
That wasn't
there was a
the intent.
misunderstanding,
Okay.
so.
The language that, as I said, the language that we previously discussed was a greater of a certain percentage or a dollar threshold. But again, that's something that the council decides on what that percentage and what that threshold, that dollar threshold is.
So
Go ahead.
do we have any historical data that would tell us, what the change orders typically are and as far as how much,
So
I mean,
the
a typical change order, is it gonna be?
bigger project every year, the council awards a paving program.
Right.
There are substantial change orders within that program, but in my mind, they're minor and almost ministerial. There may be an adjustment to a manhole, a drainage, catch basin that has to be rebuilt. Sometimes we will have a street on a paving program, and then we learn National Grid's gonna do some work on the street, and we will hold that street and not do it that year. It will get put back a year. And so some of those, where do you want to be notified on them? Where is it just routine business that, we want it to proceed ahead? There, what I'll call unexpected or deviant conditions that exist in the field that weren't picked up the year before. Sometimes things deteriorate, so they're going out doing the survey in the field this year, preparing for next year for the paving. You know, has a pothole or some subsurface condition gotten worse, so it's gonna cost a little bit more. You know, it's what do you want the notification on? What do you want the ability to come back and say, yes, we should do it, or no, we shouldn't?
Ms. Peraza?
To me, rather than base it on the average change order, it makes sense to me to find out what percentage, right, of projects fall within what. So if we know most of our projects are $250,000 or more, we can then base that and say, okay, well, 20% of that is $50,000, so, you know, whatever. So it would be most helpful to have some sort of an idea where the project costs fall. And this is something that I talked about with Mr. Gardner also in the upcoming change as well. If we knew the percentage of where our projects fall, that we know 50% of our projects are less than $250,000, that helps us understand better what world we're playing in. If 50% of our projects are more than $1 million, well, that's a different percentage. So that's the information that I would like to see to base our decisions on, is if we could get a rough estimate the last couple of years, what percentage, three big chunks, right? Like under 500,000, over 500,000, and over $1 million, or something along those lines. I think it would help us to put those percentages in.
And that information was asked for at last committee meeting as well, so hopefully if we can get that for next.
I'm not quite sure.
Make that request again.
What?
Make that request again.
Yeah, so want to know the types of change orders and the amounts, but also as Ms. Peraza was saying, the historical, you know, how many fall under.
Size of contracts.
Yes.
The council is the one that's making the final decision on that, so those.
No, it's the percentage of where the projects
But you have the
fall.
raw data. The council resolution's approving it, so you've approved a contract for 100,000, or you've approved it for $1 million.
Right, so we're asking for an aggregate of that data that we can look at without going back through the last several years, where we can do a search instead, you know?
Which the city clerk would be the record holder of that.
Okay.
So,
It
well,
seems to me that purchasing could pull that through their computer system more efficiently than the city clerk could go through every resolution. But not knowing exactly how the internal controls happen, I may be off on
We'll
that.
see if we can work it out.
All right, very good.
Either way, we'll get it from the clerk's office or we'll get it from purchasing.
right. And in the meantime, if everybody would think about the specific languages as percentage and dollar amounts that they might like to see, then maybe we can hash this out, finalize it for the next committee meeting when we discuss it again. Ms. Porterfield.
So I just want to get some clarity about I heard some conversation around about all change order requests and approvals. Are you striking that language? Because that happens anyway, not by us, but by the particular department? The very first sentence.
No.
We're talking about page.
The second page, this section.
All change order requests and approvals shall be made in writing.
Correct.
And
Well,
so,
it's supposed to happen.
It's supposed to
Well,
happen, everyone has to be in
you don't,
writing,
so you're saying right now that does not happen in writing?
Occasionally, I think it might fall through the
Okay.
cracks
So in writing by whom?
by the department head or whoever.
Okay. So, I mean, I think because we're talking about this as a council, I think it needs to be clear that who
That's
is
fine.
going to make those approvals.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Ms. Peraza.
So under section 2, professional services, do the professional services fall under the same guidelines? So purchases 20,000 and above, or public works purchases 35,000 and above, come to the council? Because I thought I was under the understanding that professional services did not come before the council.
It does not come before the council.
Right, so another big point that we discussed a number of times is to put that caveat in so that it applies to professional services in the same respect that it applies, or at a different level if we think that's more prudent, but so that at some point professional services would come before the council and not just be at free will of spending of the person who is hiring the professional service. As
You want for
another-
approval from the council? Is that what you said?
Yes, right now, there is no threshold of money when a professional service is enlisted that would make it come before the council. So we could have a $250,000 professional service that the department head or the mayor or whomever could just hire under the, category of professional services, and it does not have to come to the council. And I think we should have some sort of check and balance on that.
And Jeff, if I can just add to
Yeah,
that, so
Mr.
on the next
Kosher.
page here, we got the new section in there that at the first finance committee, we will be notified
Yep.
of those professional
It
services.
still gives us no oversight. It gives, it's
Understood.
just, here we go, this is where we
So
spent the
can
money.
somebody or Gary or Andrew what's a typical professional service? And who, if let's just say Richard looks for professional, who has to okay that, Gary? Does it come through you? How does that process work? Or Anthony?
They're largely done over my signature. Again, they have to be within budget. And there is a process by which we retain professional services. So it's an engineering firm, an architectural firm, some other consultant that's coming in.
Law firm, for example, I
I just-
mean, sorry, I was gonna say, there are timely issues sometimes, obviously, when it comes to legal services,
You need something.
somebody files a lawsuit against the city, we only have so much time to act, because we have to respond, obviously.
Yep, and I respect that,
Yep.
but I think at some threshold, we as our single most important function, right, is to be the checks and balances in the budget, should have some oversight at some monetary threshold. Whether that be $100,000 or $250,000, I don't know. I mean, but I think professional services should fall under the same category as any other spending in the city, and it's the only kind of, this is just my personal opinion. And has been another robust discussion.
Ms. Porterfield.
So, is there an average of what we kind of spend? You said most, it's probably engineering, it's maybe in the law department. Is there an average amount that we spend on any particular service? There could be an average based on what we're asking for.
Sure, there is an average, but I don't know that number if you're asking the question.
I mean, I think that's a place where we could look, because then if we're consistently at, I don't know, 150,000, 200,000, because it just makes sense and it's easier to get the day-to-day work done, and we approve that as a level, but then if it exceeds that, then, maybe that's an opportunity to come to us. So I think we would need that kind of language.
This is why we're discussing it, to
Yes.
get the key pieces out, see where people are, and what kind of thresholds and oversight people want to see. Any other questions?
I think,
Ms. Patrick.
sorry, I do think with some of the professional services, like a legal thing, you may not know the amount until after the lawyer, because they're gonna be charging you by the hour,
Well,
so.
we enter into no contract that's open-ended. They used to do that in the
Okay.
past. There's always a cap.
Okay.
So if in fact the legal fees, something's more complicated than engineering, they would have to come back for approval.
So maybe that would be a good help. What's the cap number, if we could get that? Ms. Porterfield.
I do have a question on the last discussion we were having regarding the change orders. I know that Mr. Wallen had said that he had some concerns about that, and I was just wondering if he was part of this discussion in terms of making those decisions, or will he be, since probably many of them come through the engineering department.
Mr. LaFond was.
Yeah, we
Mr.
have-
LaFond?
Yes.
But Mr. Wallen was not?
He was unavailable when we met last week, he wasn't available.
Okay.
Mr. LaFond just happened to be there.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes.
Ms. Perazzo?
Section 3, I think, I know a number of us met with Mr. Gardner, and Mr. Gardner and I had an in-depth conversation, and when he really broke it apart for me, it made absolute perfect sense what he was saying, and I think it ties in with getting those chunks of, right, where do our projects lie, in what money pots do our projects lie, because I really feel like we've invested in an affirmative action officer. He's come to us with an excellent recommendation that he can defend on every level as to why this would be beneficial to the city. And I think we continue to talk about how important it is to be responsible in these areas. And then now we have this opportunity with a great plan attached to it, and we're making a tiny, itsy bitsy little baby step. So I would like to see those percentages of those money pots, and I would like us to be more aggressive on this. And if we need to have another presentation by Mr. Gardner and ask more questions, but when we sat down and talked, it made all the sense in the world to me, and we have the ability to move in a forward direction for our minority and women-owned businesses, and now is the time. You know, it's not like let's wait another year and talk about it and see what happens. And if we make sure that we're still protecting our unions, and that is all very important work, and I agree, but if we have a greater section that we can equal the playing field a little bit more, I think now is the time to really look at that.
I think the only caveat to that was the idea of the numbers you can play with. Doesn't really matter to me. But the idea of having people go through the program was to try to ensure success and sustainability of the program. So that was the idea behind having individuals get the certification through Mr. Gardner's program, because it is an excellent program. So that was the idea behind that. Numbers we can discuss. Ms. Porterfield.
So I agree with Ms. Brazel, because Mr. Gardner had come to us with a specific amount, 500,000, and so we gave like a tenth of that, of the increase is a tenth. So I think that we should, first of all, hear again from Mr. Gardner, and it's really around the apprenticeship program. So do we know how many of these firms that have been granted the awarded contracts, have they really completed the apprenticeship programs? How many people have graduated? Because that's part of the apprenticeship program. So I think that's information that we need to discuss, and I don't know if Mr. Gardner's in a position to talk about that tonight, because that certainly makes a difference. And by increasing it by $50,000 is really not really assisting the minority and women-owned businesses to become part of the all these projects that are happening. And again, as I said the last time, we're getting ready to go into the season where people are doing work, and increasing it by this very small amount based on what the request was, I don't think is going to achieve the goal that the Affirmative Action Office is looking for. And he didn't just, this was like a year of planning, et cetera, and so on, to make this happen, and putting a lot of things in place. So, we consistently talk about making sure that we respect the recommendations of our department heads. And I think that with all the work that's been done here, and we all got a copy of the information to read over, that we really need to look at increasing it at the requested amount, and not lowering it so much, and doing it in stages.
If I may, we did increase the amount from 200 to 250, but then we also increased it to 350 for people who don't have an apprenticeship program but have gone through
The training.
exactly. So it wasn't just so for clarity's sake, that was the intent.
Right.
If it was, I don't know if it was misrepresented. It wasn't just increasing it to 250; it was increasing it to 350 for that purpose.
And the idea is for sustainability and making sure we give our local businesses an opportunity to succeed. And through Mr. Gardner's program, that gives them every opportunity to be very successful. So, but again, the numbers we can certainly continue to discuss.
So, just to, I know we need to get through this. So I really, is this going to be this in the meeting, and then the next meeting we're going to be able to wrap it? Because I'm really concerned about us getting into the season where we're going to be doing construction, and we not have this, and we be in the same position, in the same place, and using the same threshold. So that question's out there, because we had talked at the last meeting, we said we'd come back at this meeting. So I was looking for I guess a time frame when we want to be able to wrap it all up, if we need to have meetings in between or discussions in between, so that we are able to move it forward.
Mr. Parliament,
Yes.
can we email the hard copy that we have here? Sorry, the electronic copy, and can everyone come back with their suggestion how we should move forward? I will have Mr.
What I'll do
Golden
is-
draft up another
I'll,
cut version and send it out to us, and we can, move forward with it on a timely basis.
if the council would like, I'll email the city clerk the version that I worked off of. And, obviously I track changes from the old policy.
Right.
So I guess the easiest way that I would recommend to do it is to track changes. Changes,
Continue to
from
track
whatever I
changes,
send so
yeah.
that it can be seen. Obviously, so that it doesn't come as a surprise to anyone the next time you review it. My suggestion would be that everybody, it's shared with everyone so that when you come in next time, there are no surprises here.
Not tonight, it was discussion,
Yeah.
and so to get everybody's information, and hopefully we'll get that collected over the next week, and then hopefully be able to move forward. All right,
Just
yes.
for the record, I want to just ask, and I will follow up with an email. I would like the percentage of projects over the last, let's say, 3 years, that are between 0 and 350,000. Those that are between 350,000 and 500,000, 500 to $1 million, and above $1 million. Because we can't make our decisions or send our recommendations forward without that information, in my humble opinion. So if we could have that information as soon as possible, that would be helpful.
All right,
Just want to make a note of that.
yeah, I made it,
Yes.
yeah.
So we'll email out to the department head and ask their request.
Correct. I think item number 2
It's the same.
is the
so
same
we're-
discussion,
same
so
discussion.
have a motion to adjourn.
A quick question. Does anyone need any more clarification from Mr. Gardner? Because I don't know that he was involved in this particular discussion.
I'm also,
So everybody's all set?
I heard him,
You heard him what?
I've talked with him and heard the original proposal.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn? Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, I will call claims to order. We have one item on the agenda, and I believe this is for executive session because it is a lawsuit, correct?
Correct.
So I will ask for a motion to go into executive session.
One item, we have an item that's Board of Health asked for a discussion. That would also be an executive session?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I need a motion to go into executive session, please.
I do.
Okay, all those in favor? All right, we're in executive session.
We are going into executive.